Hi.
Hola.
Hi, hier ist Mr. Döse.
This is Michael Bradley.
Hey, I'm Memphis.
Hey.
Hola. Hello.
I'm here with soccer.com.
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 And I'm talking with my friends soccer.com.
See you soon.
Hey guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you my first impressions plus on-feet video of the brand new Nike Hypervenom Phantom 3 DF in the launch colorway, which is part of the Radiation Flare Pack from Nike. Now, whenever Nike launches a brand new shoe, I feel like they're a brand in particular that gets held to a pretty high standard, mainly because their lines and their top-end models generally have a runtime of about 2 years until something new comes out. So when that new product comes out, people have very, very high expectations. And I have to say, when I first saw the Hypervenom Phantom 3, or the Phantom 3 DF in this particular case, I was impressed with the design. The colorway, obviously that's something that's going to change over time. There will be plenty of colorway releases. I'm not worried about that. But I thought that the design of the shoe, the full Flyknit upper, and just the overall look was something that I was very, very impressed with. Much more so than I was with the launch of the Hypervenom Phantom 2. So, with that in mind, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing my initial impressions on this shoe. We'll cover tech specs, take a look at the weight of the shoe, as well as, of course, how they fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, stick around, watch the entire video. If you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, they'll be available as of January 30th with a retail price that I would expect to be at $300 US. Not 100% confirmed on that as of yet, but as soon as they are available, there will be links on the review page of my website, which you can get to by either clicking the little pop-up on screen or the first link down below. And on that review page, you will find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal retail price. Now, included with the shoes inside the box, being that it is a top-end model from Nike, they include a string bag, which is pretty cool, by the way. It matches the shoes, but that is it as far as extras go. Now, with the design of the shoe, as you can see, they maintained a mid-cut variation like we saw from the previous generation of Hypervenom, but this time around we have a Phantom 3 DF and a Phantom 3. So both the Phantom and Phantom DF versions have the same Flyknit base to the upper, just that one is low cut and one is mid cut, this being the mid cut variation. I will be bringing in the low cut one as well for review. So we no longer have a finish technically, so just keep that in mind. Two top end models, one low, one mid. Obviously the upper has been entirely changed from the Nike skin uppers that we saw on the first and second generations of the Hypervenom line. Obviously the second generation had two different versions of that upper, but this is entirely made from one single piece of Flyknit. Now, what does this mean? I know a lot of people were a little bit confused by this. Some people really, really liked the Nike skin upper that we got on the original Phantom and then the second half of the Phantom 2. I thought that was a great upper. I still think it's a very good upper. But with that being said, I think what they've done here with this Flyknit upper is something that exceeds the quality level of what we saw from previous generations of Hypervenom, and I think is different enough to where this shoe does separate itself from the Obra 2 and the Superfly 5, even though those are two shoes with full Flyknit uppers as well. So essentially what Nike has done here with the Hypervenom Phantom 3, Phantom 3 DF in this case, is that they've given it a one-piece upper, all entirely made from Flyknit, but you're gonna find a texturing system across the entire shoe. It's a 3D texturing, to a certain extent similar to what you'll find on the Obra 2, but in a completely different pattern and across the entire upper. So it's not necessarily zonal. What is zonal though are pour-on XRD foam inserts within the strike zone on the shoe. And you can see there's a little bit of a graphic where you're actually going to find the little kind of diamond shapes with the pour-on foam inserts. And it's really, really interesting. So it basically spans right in this vicinity, slightly across the top of the foot, the main part of the foot that you would use to strike the ball. Now what's interesting about this system is that you have 2 millimeters of pour-on XRD foam, which is actually a reactive foam. It is rate dependent, which means that upon softer impacts, the foam will be softer, and upon firmer impacts, it's gonna have more of a kind of harder feel, if that makes any sense. It's not going to absorb as much impact. So what does this mean for the touch and feel of the shoe? Well, it means a couple different things. Based on what I can tell just from juggling in the shoes for a couple of minutes, it's not super, super noticeable. It's a slightly dampened sensation, but not really to the same extent as what you would find from something like an Obra 2 with its much more extreme 3D texturing. And I know a lot of people automatically wanted to compare this to the EvoPower line with its AccuFoam material. This is a lot firmer and a lot thinner than what we've seen on pretty much any generation of EvoPower, so it's not quite that sensation either. Instead, what you're getting, I think, is something that's just a little bit of added thickness to the upper without adding any kind of a bulky sensation or any kind of bulky material to the shoe. It doesn't take away from the feel in any way at all, but it definitely does change the experience ever so slightly. It's something that I think is fairly unique in terms of what we've seen from other brands, even though we have seen a similar concept implemented from other brands before. But it's a really cool idea, and based on what I can tell, I do like it so far. But again, with more testing, I'll be able to give kind of a more detailed opinion on that particular performance aspect of the upper. Now, as far as the rest of the texturing goes, because you can see it there across the lateral side, and then of course it does kind of wrap around where you'll find the actual pour-on foam as well. It is kind of a hollow texturing, so very similar to the 3D texturing found on the Obra 2, but a lot more minimal. With that being said, it still does leave certain hollow points in the upper. So with that in mind, the touch that you do get on the ball is really a thickness that is in between what you'll find from the Obra 2 and the Superfly 5, which is actually something that I really, really like the feel of. Again, whenever you have a brand with different lineups, you want those lines to have kind of differentiating characteristics so they're not all the same feeling, and you definitely get something that is in between the Superfly and the Obra in regards to thickness. So I would say the shoe overall is on the thinner side, but it doesn't feel quite as thin, quite as barefoot feeling as what you'll get from the Mercurial line in general, not just the Superfly 5. As far as the actual Flyknit material itself is concerned, it's super soft, it's super flexible, the quality is very good as you would expect. This is probably the most detailed Flyknit upper that we've seen from Nike thus far, and I have to say I'm really, really impressed with it. It looks very high tech in person, and it's just a really nice implementation of a knitted upper. It really shows how far along Nike's Flyknit technology has come, and as far as just knitted uppers in general from any brand, I really think that Nike is by far the farthest along in that particular department. You're going to find Nike skin covering the majority of the upper, of course, like you'll find from the other Flyknit models from Nike, and they also do include ACC all conditions control. You can see the branding right there on the upper. Your wet control element from Nike that, in my opinion, isn't really a big deal in regards to actual performance. As far as the actual middle of the shoe is concerned, it is a one-piece construction. So where the laces are located, extending up into the collar, you're going to find an elasticated Flyknit material that obviously doesn't maintain any kind of structure. That, of course, is where you'll find also the off-centered lacing system, which is maintained across pretty much every single generation of Hypervenom. They did not change that here with the third generation. But what's interesting here is the way that they did the lacing, and it's kind of a controversial change as well. So unlike the Phantom 2, which was the first mid-cut Hypervenom where you had a standard synthetic upper and then the knitted aspect through the middle extending into the collar, this is full Flyknit. So you're now with a one-piece design that doesn't use traditional lace holes, but unlike the other one-piece mid-cut uppers from Nike, also made from Flyknit, this doesn't use a dual lace hole system until the top two lace holes. Instead, the laces are actually attached to the upper by way of fly wire cables that run from the base of the sole into the actual lacing system in a fairly wide kind of crisscross pattern, as you guys can see. They crisscross basically at the lacing points and then run straight down from their actual kind of lacing points, if that makes any sense. You can see what I'm talking about. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but it definitely does make a lot of sense in regards to actually adding structure to the upper without adding a lot of internal structure and just general bulk, taking away from the sock-like nature of the Flyknit material. Now, the concern here with this is something that I'll talk about a little bit more during the on-feet portion of the video when you get to see me lacing them up. A lot of people have asked already if they pull too hard on the laces, are they going to break the fly wire cables? I don't necessarily see that being a major concern. I don't really necessarily see it snagging as well. It's something that I think would be pretty unlikely in general. But in regards to actually tightening them up, it can be a little bit tricky. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit more during the on-feet portion of the video. Other notes regarding the upper itself is that it does feel super soft and super flexible along with the sole plate, which we'll get to in just a second. So as far as break-in is concerned, no major issues here. It does have that sock-like sensation that you would expect from a Flyknit high-end shoe from Nike, so that's definitely very good. Internally, you're gonna find a little bit of a synthetic material lining the inside, but it's very, very thin and doesn't seem to restrict the flexibility of the upper in any way at all. Moving on to the collar and the mid-cut aspect of this shoe, the way it fits, something I'll talk about again during the on-feet portion of the video, reminds me a lot of the Obra 2, which is a positive thing. And then of course you have the mid-cut collar, the dynamic fit collar, which they've changed in comparison to the original Phantom or the Phantom 2, the previous model. And as you guys can see, it's 10 millimeters higher on the medial side versus the lateral side. So it has a little bit of shape to it, kind of along the lines of what you'll get from the Obra 2, but a little bit different. The reasoning for that is just for the sake of having a little bit of a different look. I've talked about this before in my videos, but there really is no performance benefit to the mid-cut collar. If anything, if you're gonna talk about performance benefits, I think the benefit of having a collar, especially if you're playing on artificial grass, is that it can help to keep out any kind of those rubber pellets from getting on the inside of your shoe, but it doesn't restrict mobility. It doesn't really add any ankle support. It's essentially just an elasticated sock that extends from what would normally be a low-cut shoe. So it looks cool, I'll give it that. Does it feel different from previous mid-cut collars from Nike or mid-cut collars in their current lineup? Not really, if I'm completely honest with you guys, but it definitely does look cool, and I think that's partially what they were going for. So the design, again, is more so around the look of the shoe and differentiating it from other lines, as opposed to actually feeling and performing differently from other mid-cut shoes that we've seen from Nike, either currently or in the past. As far as the heel area is concerned, you're gonna find an internal plastic heel counter, but you're also gonna find these little kind of triangular, I guess, stick-up points from the actual sole plate itself, almost like a faux heel counter, if that makes any sense. It's just added structure to the side just to enhance stability, just in terms of keeping your heel locked in place and preventing it from sliding from side to side. So I think that's kind of a cool implementation. I also think it looks pretty good as well. Internally though, you're gonna find that the shoe does have a synthetic leather heel liner with a decent amount of padding, very similar to what we've seen from the previous Hypervenom Phantom 2, but again, the shape and general fit in the heel has been modified a little bit to fit more like the Obra 2, which I find to be a lot more comfortable. And then of course you have the insole, which features a Nike grip implementation in the liner. So what you're gonna find is that the liner itself here in Volt Yellow, it does have the Nike grip branding, which doesn't really mean all that much, but this actual yarn material that they're using, this mesh, has a slightly grippy element to it. Does it feel drastically different from other insoles from Nike against a regular pair of socks? Not necessarily, I will say that. It doesn't feel particularly abnormal, and just based on the little juggling that I did, nothing about it stood out particularly as being really unique. You're gonna find a little bit of texturing here in this black area, but again, it's nothing that feels super grippy. It has a slightly rubberized kind of feel to it, if that makes any sense. It's slightly more sticky than a regular mesh liner would be, but it's a very minimal difference that, again, I don't necessarily anticipate having a huge impact on the overall performance and responsiveness of the shoe. The actual foam of the insole, as you guys can see, is kind of like an ortholite foam, and it actually has a really good, decent thickness to it. So overall, I think it's a pretty cool insole. Obviously, the Nike grip system is something that's gonna require a little bit more testing in order to have kind of a more solid opinion on, but I like the idea, and I think it's something that should be worked into more insole designs because it is a very important aspect of any shoe. Internally as well, it's difficult to show you guys, but there is, you can actually see the little kind of stripe design there. There is actually a grippy kind of rubberized element at the heel, as well as in the forefoot on the inside at the base of the sole plate to grip the actual insole itself and preventing it from sliding around on the inside of the shoe. So again, something that we see very similarly on the actual Obra 2, but they have implemented it here on the Hypervenom Phantom 3 as well, which I think is a good thing. Now, as far as the actual sole plate itself is concerned, the sole plate is a combination of Pebax and nylon material. So you're gonna find Pebax mainly in the forefoot for really good flexibility, and I would say out of all the sole plates we've seen from the Hypervenom line, this being kind of the first redesign, this feels a lot more flexible in the forefoot, but you maintain good rigidity through the heel and midfoot area, being that it is that stiffer nylon material. So Really, really like the sole plate so far. I definitely do prefer it over previous generations just on the fact that it is more flexible, but it feels solid under feet as well. It doesn't feel flimsy in any way at all. And as far as the stud pattern is concerned, this is what they call their hyper-reactive stud pattern. So it's completely redesigned. Again, something all new for the Hypervenom generation here. And it features kind of a hybrid of what we get from the Mercurial line, at least along the lateral side. Basically, the lateral side of the stud pattern with these chevron-shaped bladed studs is exactly like what you'll find on a pair of Mercurials. But then on the medial side, you'll find these kind of hexagon-shaped conical studs, if that makes any sense. They're technically the shape of a hexagon, but they'll react and feel like a conical stud. And that's going to give you kind of that freedom to twist and pivot when you're on your toes on the medial side, and then more harsh kind of grip when pushing off on the lateral side. So it's kind of a similar concept to what we've seen in the past from Nike on the CTR 360 Maestri 3, for example, but obviously implemented this time around on the Hypervenom. And overall, I'm pretty optimistic about it. It is a firm ground stud pattern, so please keep that in mind. Only made for use on natural grass. But again, very optimistic about the overall look. Nike generally tends to do a pretty good job with their stud patterns, and I like that they did implement something from the Mercurial line because I think it's the best aggressive stud pattern out there at the moment. But at the same time, the fact of having the hexagon studs on the medial side, I think is going to change up the feel enough to where you're going to get a completely different experience that is also going to perform well, which ultimately that's pretty important as well. Now, in regards to the weight of the shoe, they're actually a lot lighter than what we saw from the Hypervenom Phantom 2. The Phantom 3 DF is an ounce lighter. So in a size 9 US brand new condition, it weighs in at about 6.9 ounces, which is actually the exact same weight of a pair of Superfly 5. So as far as mid-cut shoes go, the Phantom 3 DF and the Superfly 5 are exactly the same weight in the high 6 ounce range, which is, like I said, very, very light. They have a nice light feel on feet, which is exactly what you're going for. But of course, the overall fit and feel of the shoe is going to be drastically different from the Superfly 5. So if you like the weight range of the Superfly 5, but want something a little bit different from what that shoe has on offer, this is definitely something worth considering because, like I said, it is the exact same weight. And as far as that low cut variation is concerned, which I will be reviewing, by the way, I'm working on getting my hands on a pair right away, I would anticipate that low cut version of the Phantom 3, the regular Phantom 3, if you will, to be a little bit lighter than the DF model, just for the fact that it's not going to have the extra material extending above the ankle area. So the colorway itself, that's obviously something that's been kind of controversial in regards to the shoe itself. Yes, the design of the Flyknit does give the shoe a certain look, this being kind of a two-tone color. I'm sure we will see different variations of this throughout the run of the Hypervenom Phantom 3, but this being the launch colorway as part of the Radiation Flare Pack, it's very, very bright. You're going to find a combination of poison green, volt yellow, hyper orange, and black. So the lateral side is a combination of that green and volt yellow that we often see from Nike. And then the medial side, as you can see, is a very, very vibrant hyper orange color. A little bit of kind of a warning tape, caution tape design going across the back, which I think looks pretty cool. You have the offset actual flywire cables, which is pretty neat as well. The same basic Nike swoosh positioning on this shoe like we've seen on pretty much every other generation of Hypervenom here. One in the forefoot, one at the heel. I really like the look of this kind of triangular extension piece on either side. And then the sole plate, as you guys can see, is mostly black in color with translucent kind of tinted studs. So overall, the shoe looks a lot better in person, I will say that. The color is super, super bright, so if you don't necessarily like bright shoes, you might want to wait for future colorway releases that perhaps will be a little bit more subtle, but it's not unlike Nike to launch with a very vibrant color. That's going to be very noticeable once pros start wearing these, which they already have. So overall, not my cup of tea as far as just being super, super loud, but overall, I think it's a really good looking shoe in general, which kind of surprised me. So enough talking about the shoe, let's talk about how they fit and feel on feet. So you can see here that on my right foot, on the right shoe I should say, there's a pair of black reflective SR4U replacement laces. Now these are actually junior length ones just because you don't need super long laces because it does have a fairly short lacing system. But nonetheless, if you are interested in a pair of replacement laces, the website to go to is www.sr4ulaces.com. There'll be a little pop-up on screen as well as a link down below in the description. So if you're interested in a pair, be sure to go ahead and check that out. So for putting on any of these mid-cut models from Nike, Pretty simple process. You want to get your foot basically halfway in, grab it from the edges of the collar where you start to kind of lose the structure from the shoe and kind of it extends into the actual fully elasticated collar. You want to grab it right about there so you're not stepping on that structured area and bending it inwards, and then just pull your foot in. Now with this flywire cable lacing system, my gripe here is that when you're actually tightening them, it doesn't necessarily hold its tension all the way down. So you can see I can pull it tight, but it's immediately going to lose some tension as soon as I let go, just because it's not an actual lace hole. It's kind of just an open loop where the two flywire pieces kind of crisscross to create a lace hold position for the laces themselves. Is it effective? It still works, but if you like to tie your shoes really, really tight, expect to have to take an extra minute or so to really kind of go back and tighten it after the fact, just to maintain a good level of tension on the laces themselves. So tie this right shoe up really quickly, and we'll move on to the left shoe so you guys can get another look at how that was done. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to do this as best as I can here. So again, kind of like to get my foot in halfway, grab it from the front, grab it from the back, make sure my thumb is kind of supporting the structured area of the back of the heel so I'm not stepping on it, and then just push my foot in. Pretty straightforward, not really difficult to get on, and as you wear them, this elasticated part will stretch out ever so slightly, and it'll be a lot easier to actually get the shoes on. So again, you want to tie them up, kind of up until this point, and then you want to go back down and kind of tighten it again, just so the laces hold their tension a little bit better. That's just the nature of this flywire lacing system. Not a big deal, but kind of a quirk of the shoe nonetheless. So that is what they look like on feet. And I have to say, out of the box, the shoe is very, very comfortable. The heel area, which is kind of the most controversial thing with any of the mid-cut models from Nike, they have kind of historically been a little bit uncomfortable and somewhat difficult to get used to, but these feel a lot like the Obra 2s, which I don't want to say feel like a normal low-cut shoe, but very, very close to it. So if you haven't worn a mid-cut shoe before, these will feel fairly familiar. It's not really super uncomfortable. There's not a lot of pressure on the back of the heel. And overall, they seem pretty much good to go out of the box. As always with any new shoes, I definitely recommend still taking your time with the break-in process and just making sure that you're 100% comfortable before wearing them into a game or something like that. But overall, the heel area feels quite good. The collar, again, you don't really notice it while you're actually wearing them. The material itself, the Flyknit, super flexible. You can see I can actually wiggle my toes in a brand new pair of shoes, and the sole plate and upper moves with my foot, which is just a good sign. Definitely a lot different than what we got from the original version of the Phantom 2, just in regards to flexibility. And the shoe itself just fits really nicely. The width and general shape of the shoe isn't too far off from the previous generation of Hypervenoms. This does feel more streamlined though, just because it is a one-piece upper. You don't necessarily have different materials kind of intertwined that are overlapping each other. So this does feel less bulky and just like a more streamlined modern design in general, which I personally do prefer. And in regards to width, they have a decent width to them. Definitely not as tight fitting as the Mercurial line, but definitely not quite as wide as what you'll get from the Magistas. It's kind of an in-between thing, which again, Nike is trying to have something for everybody in regards to fit and feel. So this kind of falls in between the Mercurials and the Magistas. As far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing my usual size 9 US here, just like I wore in the previous generation of Hypervenoms, and the fit and the length is absolutely perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair of these for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So that is pretty much it, guys, for my review of the Hypervenom Phantom 3DF. Again, if you're interested in the pair, there'll be a little eye in the corner of the screen, or you can click the first link down below in the description. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find Buy It Now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal retail price. If you have any questions regarding this shoe, leave them down below in the comments, and I definitely will get an answer out to you. If you enjoyed today's video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all of my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.